Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. This is our weekly EV podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. So we've got a interesting item here that we found on Twitter from Sawyer Merritt, who posts a lot of stuff about Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that the Wall Street Journal is reporting that after Biden's inauguration, Tesla officials reached out to the White House multiple times, hoping to connect Biden and Elon. And Elon repeatedly got the cold shoulder. The reason that the Biden officials didn't connect was they didn't want to anger the UAW union, which was leaning on the White House to keep its distance from Musk, according to the Wall Street Journal.
This is fascinating stuff.
It is. You know, we did a video right after this event because the whole world was shaking their head puzzled and saying, why would Joe talk about the fact that GM is leading the charge with EVs when, Tesla at that time had 66% of the EV market. And the video that we did was very kind to the Biden administration, saying, Joe, you got to get yourself some different script writers. They didn't do their homework. They didn't do their research. They screwed up. And the facts do not indicate what was reported, right?
Yeah, and the union people are saying things like, they didn't have to push very hard. The administration understood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Then in August 2021, he says Biden organized an EV event to be anchored by him, signing the executive order with a target to make half of all the new vehicles sold in 2030 zero-emissions vehicles. Just ahead of the event, the White House officials called Tesla with an apology. Elon wasn't invited.
Oh, man. So that means they did this on purpose.
Precisely. Instead, they say, or he says, Biden welcomed the executives from the three other car companies, GM, Ford, Chrysler, and the parent, Stellantis. We made it clear to the administration about where things were, a former union official said. We didn't have to make it an ultimatum. They understood. Talk about buying, your way into an administration. Well, they say things got worse from there. In the auto industry, Detroit's leading the world in electric vehicles, Biden said in November of 2021, while promoting the new infrastructure bill. He then turned, and I remember this clearly, to GM's Mary Barra and praised the CEO, saying, "You electrified the entire automobile industry. I'm serious. You led, and it matters." Do you remember that?
I do. And I have a fun stat. I found that what I think is the right Wall Street Journal article. They gave a couple of numbers about that.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla that year put out 144,000 cars. General Motors, 26.
Okay.
Yet General Motors is leading the industry.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just shocked that that our government can be bought that easily. So anyway, Sawyer goes on. He says, we knew most of these details that are in the story, and the story goes on about other reasons Elon broke from the Dems. But Elon had every right to be pissed at Biden after that. The previous two UAW presidents went to jail for corruption.
Yeah.
And the current one is being investigated for corruption. In 2021, there was only one clear leader in EVs, and that was Tesla. He says it's shameful not to include a great American company, one run by the greatest entrepreneur of our lifetime, and one that has helped create and support hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States.
Sawyer has a real point there.
Mm-hmm.
I also read a little bit that Elon, when he took over Twitter and has now renamed it X, he received a lot of vile backlash and persecution and vitriol from people from the left of center politically for daring to take a public bastion of the progressives and turn it into a private company and then allow all of these conservative people to actually post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
how dare you open it up for free speech is essentially what they were telling them.
Yeah. So interesting things happening in the EV world. We've got some people chiming in. Instagram, I am Kula J. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, another Instagram. Miss June 117 says hello. Thanks for joining us
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah. So Tesla has issued a warning against this viral trend, which involves placing a wet towel around the supercharger connectors to allegedly speed up charging. And what they're talking about is the NACS connector that plugs into the car.
Yeah.
Inside that connector is a heat sensor. And its function in life is as a protective device, kind of like the circuit breakers in your home. If you're overloading any circuit to avoid, burning the wires, creating a fire, your circuit breaker will trip. Well, this heat sensor in the NACS connector adjusts the charging rate. And this was actually proven, it turns out, by Kyle Connor with his channel, Out of Spec Motors, or Out of Spec, which reportedly showed an increase from 58 kW to 119 kW when he was charging with one of these wet towels, cooling off the temperature sensor.
That's a big change. And, I can attest to the idea that these temperature sensors are sensitive to ambient temps and to charging. If you remember, I've talked about this before a couple years back. Coming back from California, we get to Quartzsite, Arizona. It's down on the Colorado River by the California border. That day was 118 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think about it. I figured I'm going to stop in for a 15-minute supercharge, add 60 or 70 miles to the car, and then take off and be on my way. Well, because it's 118, I couldn't do that. It was only charging at 7 kilowatts.
Wow, slow. Yep.
So it was a slow charge. So I waited an hour, put about 25 miles into the car, and then prayed that I was able to make it up to all the way to Buckeye.
Right. So here's Tesla's response to this. They stated, placing a wet cloth on a supercharger cable handle does not increase charging rates and interferes with temperature monitors, creating risk of overheating or damage. The company emphasized that this practice can prevent their systems from detecting genuine charging issues. Later on, there's another statement where there's an acknowledgement that, well, it does really affect the charge rate, but we don't recommend it.
Sure.
And can you imagine the liability of having someone cool their connector and a fire erupts, either with the car or with the charging, unit? And where does that liability rest? And sometimes there are cameras, observing this kind of activity. I would say that it would null and void any insurance claims at that point.
I think it probably would, because you have, it's no different than somebody going out and doing a modification to a gasoline engine to bypass safety protocols that are in the gasoline engine. That's exactly what these guys are doing. They're making a modification to bypass the safety protocols.
Right.
Sure, okay, it might make your charging go a little bit faster for a little bit longer, but in the meantime, you're causing too much heat to go down into that battery system, causing too much heat to go to that connector. The first thing I would think is you're running the risk of is your actual connector is going to melt into the socket, and then you've got a real problem.
Yeah. Well, Tesla continues with another statement, which is thermal management is crucial in fast charging, as high voltage current through small cables generates substantial heat.
Mm-hmm.
While a wet towel may seem helpful, it actually interferes with heat sensors on the connector, potentially leading to dangerous situations by allowing more current than is safe. Tesla strongly advises against this practice to ensure proper system function and user safety.
Got a couple of comments here. First, Christian Coca on Facebook, thanks for joining us. He says, Detroit lobbyists and unions are kissing Biden to stay alive.
Interesting comment.
Definitely.
Bearded Tesla's on X. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. He said, wouldn't it be wild if I just walked in the door to hang out during your live stream? It would be what? Are you?
It would be
here?
wild. Come on in anytime you want.
Yeah. That would be quite a treat. Um, were you at the takeover in San Luis Obispo? Let us know. I think he was. I think I saw him up on stage.
He actually drove yesterday to Chandler, and I know he was hanging. He said he was going to be hanging around the Phoenix area for a couple days.
Uh-huh.
So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you possibly stopping by?" And he said possibly, and then that was it. I hadn't heard back from him. So
Cool. That would be awesome. We'll pull up a chair and put him right here in the middle, and
Absolutely.
we'll have Bearded Tesla give us his viewpoints on what the crazy stuff happening lately is all about.
I think he's got one of those first Tesla tents for the Cybertruck because he's driving his Cybertruck around the U.S. right now.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be kind of cool to see that.
That
Definitely
sounds.
would be.
If he does come to Gruber Motor Company, that sounds like a social media event, guys. So get those camera batteries and microphone batteries charged. All right. So one of the things that happened, of course, over the weekend was the San Luis Obispo, California Tesla Takeover event. And it was fairly well attended. A lot of vendors were there. And we sent one of our people, actually, Maximilian, went there to that event. And a lot of people asked if I was coming, and I was not. I was here in Phoenix. So, but one of the things that was unexpected was Elon actually piped in through a Zoom call. Franz von Holzhausen was supposed to be there in person, and he also Zoomed in, prior commitment or something, apparently. But overall, we were watching some of the events as they took place. It looked like a fairly successful event. I was in the one in Flachau, Austria,
Right.
the end of May, and it was really Europe's first. So that was, for me, kind of like the benchmark. What are these things like? How many attend? And it turns out Austria, according to the ticket sales, had 2,200 people at one point. So that was pretty impressive for a first-time event like that. And they had a light show that was spectacular. There was a, we've got someone piping in now from YouTube. Arto Valagelia. Flying vehicles were common 6,000 years ago, but chargers harness energy on the air. If chargers harness too much energy, flying vehicles drop down. Have to make magnetic field measurements to keep vehicles flying in the air. This must be futuristic stuff.
That's a very interesting comment from Arto.
6,000 years ago, Egyptian days, I would say.
That would be a little before the Egyptian pharaohs even.
Yeah, amazing. You know, there's this whole school of thought that we have evolved many times before on this planet and basically destroyed ourselves, or a comet destroyed it, or whatever. The feeling is that Antarctica is part of that, and if we really dig deep enough, we're going to be able to find some artifacts that corroborate some of this. But it's fun stuff to think about.
It's fun to think about. Yes.
All right, so the Tesla takeover in San Luis Obispo, I don't think was as well attended as Austria, but it definitely had a whole lot more hype, a whole lot more excitement, and same thing, there were influencers there that showed up. Austria also had a fair share, including myself. And the light show in San Luis Obispo, we're still getting the final video content, and we'll be posting some of that, so keep an eye on our channel. But apparently there was a well-known drummer that syncopated some of his activity with the light show.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I was wondering if they were going to have a light show and try to match or even better what had happened in Europe.
Yeah. With the stuff we got from Max, guys, are we processing any of that yet? We're working on it. Okay. Well, so we'll be releasing stuff over the next few days. One of the things, though, that, and we'll have a lot more information on Tesla Roadster podcast in 45 minutes, which is 11 o'clock our time. The announcement by Elon hinting this new second generation Tesla Roadster was going to be even more spectacular than everybody considered.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that even more. To drop part of that teaser, he also talked about this a little bit on the second quarter earnings call.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it wasn't just at the takeover that he started to drop hints about the next generation Roadster.
You know, the problem that Tesla has had, they announced this in 2017. And by the way, in the next podcast, we'll go through the second generation Roadster history, the timelines, the dates, the amounts, how much it costs to get one, all of that. But they have to keep improving the specifications. The first spec that we saw, which blew everybody away, was 0 to 60 seconds in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
0 to 60 miles per hour, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
in 2 seconds. And then Tesla beat that themselves with their Tesla Model S Plaid. It blew that spec away. It's under 2 seconds, 1.9 or something like that. And then the other manufacturers, you know, like Lucid, for example, with their Sapphire, they're in that range or even less. And so the delays have forced Tesla to continue to come up with more specifications that impress. And the one that was hinted, at least in the San Luis Obispo during the podcast, that there will be air thrusters provided by SpaceX
Mm-hmm.
for an extra cost, we're assuming, but which may allow the car to fly short distances. Now we're thinking vertical takeoff and landing type vehicle, right? Thrusters that not only hit the ground to lift the car, but then to provide some propulsion, laterally. So we're not sure yet precisely what this car is going to have, but there is a date now that has been talked about, and that's 2025. Aim for a 2025 launch.
You know, I every time I hear about this with flying cars, and it's not just Tesla, it's what was it? Yeah, Avex, I think, was another one, and I just think, oh my gosh, our drivers are so bad in 2 dimensions.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like when drivers truly have the chance to fly? To fly now, they're taking that 3rd dimension of, it's not just forward, left, or right. It's also up or down.
And I can just visualize this. We now have VTOL type vehicles, and someone's putting on their makeup while they're flying this thing, and we have another 9/11 event, unintended.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. If you're interested, see us at 11 o'clock for the Tesla Roadster podcast, and we'll go through the history of the 2nd generation Tesla Roadster. All right, another news item here. Outside a tiny garage on the outskirts of Kiev, Ukraine, a group of mechanics pored over the carcass of a wrecked old Tesla, stripping it of all its parts. But instead of trying to repair the car, they were busy extracting its battery, hoping to use it to power local businesses and homes.
Wow.
Now, who's doing this is, there's actually a company name here, too. Let me give that to you here in a second. Down here. The owner is Ukrainian Autonomous Systems, is the name of the company. His name is Oleksandr Benza. And he realized he could salvage batteries from damaged Teslas to power the homes and businesses that are being destroyed with the Russian drones and missiles. There's some interesting statistics as to how bad the electrical infrastructure is in Ukraine right now in this article. And let me share some of that with you. There are, of course, regular blackouts in the country since Russia has launched a string of attacks, targeting oftentimes its energy grid to try to disable the country.
Right.
They say Russia has now knocked out or captured, do you remember Chernobyl?
I do.
Chernobyl was the nuclear disaster.
Yeah, that was the disaster.
Zaporozhye was the big nuclear plant that was in operation that Russia seized fairly early on in the skirmish. Russia has now knocked out or captured more than half of Ukraine's domestic electricity generating capacity, forcing energy companies to impose rolling nationwide blackouts that leave homes and businesses without electricity for up to 20 hours a day. Do you remember we had this problem in California?
I do.
The brownouts, the rolling blackouts?
I do. PG&E in California couldn't keep up with the demand, and they ended up with rolling blackouts.
So they say businesses have been forced to adapt. Across Kiev, diesel generators parked outside shops and cafes rumble into action as soon as the power goes down, and many households in the capital plug their appliances into rechargeable battery systems at home. It sounds like a market for UPSs and critical power equipment, does it not?
It sure does. It sure does. And so they take one they break the battery, they open up the battery, break it open, pull out each of the modules. Each module becomes its own charger and can provide about 10 hours worth of electricity to a typical apartment, not including any heating or cooling that the apartment needs.
Yep. What we're unsure of is whether they're going the extra step, which is converting the DC energy to AC. Now you can power all of your appliances, except for maybe the heavy duty, high current, type devices, like your cook stove, for example.
Right.
But as we talked earlier before the podcast, in the world of lighting, the old technology, incandescent bulbs, they didn't care whether they received DC voltage or AC voltage, because you had a filament that essentially was glowing.
Sure.
The newer style of lighting, like fluorescents, CFLs, they're going to require AC, and then LEDs, unless modified, operate off DC anyway. So it's unclear to us at this point if they're doing any kind of modifications to make this work.
Yeah.
So the owner of this company, Alexander Benza, realized that he had a potential solution. For years, he's been buying crashed Teslas on insurance auctions in the U.S. and then importing them to Ukraine. We were always wondering, who are we competing with?
Yes.
Because you'd see Poland, Ukraine, South America, and you're going, what, isn't it expensive to buy them here, ship them, deal with customs and all of that? But that's where they went. And then his mechanics used to restore and resell the cars. Well, now they're going a step further, at least with the ones that aren't easily restored. So good for them. Creativity.
That creativity is absolutely remarkable. Just watching and seeing what all the things that the people are going through, and the war is a terrible thing. Any war is terrible, but that creativity, just a huge respect for that.
Yeah. YouTube, Classic Garner has joined us. He says, will be nice when the new EV battery technology comes out that China is producing. Batteries are improving all the time. Every week it seems like there's a new article about a better version, new technology, better ways of creating or storing DC energy.
It's true. And we did something not long ago when we were doing comparisons of battery technologies. And the one statistic that I thought was remarkable there was the battery tech was growing at somewhere like 30% per year in density.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, comparing it to graphene batteries and other solid state batteries that were growing at a 50% per year rate, but still 30% per year. That is so impressive.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it'll continue because demand drives innovation. Simple rule in a free market economy. YouTube, Arto Valajaya, flying cars have to be 100% autonomous. Well, that would be safer, I think. If we get AI involved, we get the human element out of it. You become a passenger like you do with commercial airlines.
Yeah. Even then, I don't know if I trust it, but it's better to have, Waymo flying you around than it is to try to do it yourself.
Now, okay, Arto does add, though, they don't let me write on X. So it looks like his viewpoints may be a little bit too severe for the X platform.
It's possible. On Instagram, EV Smoke ATX. It says ATX showing EV plugins some love.
Okay.
So thank you very much again.
And Bearded Tesla, he says, I'll be there in 35 minutes. Well, you know what? You can join us for the Tesla Roadster podcast, and you can give us the lowdown if you were in San Luis Obispo about what that was like.
That should be a lot of fun. We'll make sure we have an extra mic set up for you.
Let me see if he's trying to reach us, and we'll give him the building number here. Nope, not yet.
Yes.
And then Arto says, bees don't fly if there's too much energy in the air. That's why also you need to make magnetic field measurements on harness Tesla coils. Can't harness too much energy, but batteries solve this issue. He's sounding now like Nikola Tesla. Nikola was way out there with some theories.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So another article here found interesting. The impact of the Tesla layoffs, recent Tesla layoffs. Remember, it was 10% of the worker population. And now there's some numbers coming in. What this cost? And why would it cost anything? You would think, well, you lay people off and you're starting to save money immediately.
Well, kind of, but kind of not. When the bigger companies do layoffs, there's almost always a severance package involved.
Right.
Because what you're doing is you're letting somebody go from the company. Depending on what state you have, sometimes you don't have a right to work state like we have here in Arizona. And so there are some rules that go in that. But typically, even just based on the size of the company, you want to give people a chance to be able to transition. So you have a payout, some sort of severance. And all that severance gets lumped into the quarter in which it's paid out.
Right.
A lot of times that severance could be several months worth of pay. And that's what happened here with Tesla.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much, you may ask, did this affect Tesla? $622 million of restructuring costs were listed by Tesla in its Q2 2024 update letter.
Mm-hmm.
And the prediction or the impact of this was, without this item, the earnings per share would have been 58% higher. Can you imagine what would have happened to the stock price?
Oh, it would have gone way high. And it definitely wouldn't have had the hit that it got when Tesla came in below expectations.
Right, right. So you had mentioned that most investors understand that a layoff may have a short-term negative impact, especially with the EPS being affected.
Right.
Where's the benefit?
Well, the benefit is that in the following quarters, usually it takes a quarter or two to flush out. After that quarter or two, now you've got the reduced cost for labor that flows just like that one-time charge flowed right down to the bottom line. Your reduced cost for labor also flows down to the bottom line, but in a positive way. So usually, I'd say about 2 quarters is what it takes to start seeing the positive impact.
So although we don't give investment advice, look for some pretty exciting things over the next couple of quarters with Tesla.
I would definitely say that. My big surprise was how much Tesla stock got pounded for missing their earnings per share when people knew already that there was going to, with the release of their financials, that they had that one-time write-down.
Right. Good point. Well, I'm starting to run out of...
I think we should wrap up so we can set up for the other
news items here.
Yeah,
for the other people coming.
We're at the
Jay,
bottom.
you're welcome to stop by as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We, in fact, let me just expound on that a little bit. Gruber Motor Company literally does, at least on average, 1 tour per day. And it's a combination of people. There are owners that may be vacationing, swinging through. They usually stop here.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla people that are driving through, they stop here. What we have is unique in that it replicates Tesla 16 to 18 years ago, Menlo Park, San Carlos, where you see nothing but Tesla Roadsters being worked on. So it's a nostalgic trip for most of the Tesla people, and we enjoy taking them through a auto shop of the future, which shows them what it takes to repair electric vehicles, which is substantially different than ICE vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So feel free to stop by. You don't need an appointment. Just contact us, ev@gruber.com, and I will meet you there and personally give you a tour. Do that.
Look forward to seeing you guys in a half hour. My hope is that it's with Bearded Tesla Guy in the shop as well.
Thanks for joining us.